The crumpled paper tumbled across the floor of the Galactic Defense Council chambers, ignored by the assembled delegates as they debated humanity's fate. Commander Visera Cole then stepped on it without a second glance, her attention focused on the holographic displays showing the Vorthic fleet's inexorable advance toward Earth. The humans have contributed nothing to our understanding of Vorthic technology, Admiral Kex Norn declared, his forearms gesturing dismissively at the human delegation. Their crude scans and primitive analysis have yielded no actionable intelligence. Dr. Elena Voss, Earth's chief xenobiologist, felt her jaw clench. For 3 months, humanity had been begging the Council for military support against the approaching Vorthic armada. The insectoid species had already consumed 17 worlds, leaving nothing but stripped planetary cores in their wake. Earth had 47 days before the swarm arrived. "We've provided everything we could," Elena said, her voice steady despite the crushing weight of desperation. "Our long-range sensors detected patterns in their ship formations that our quantum analysis computers dismissed as statistical noise," interrupted Counselor Thaven, her crystalline form pulsing with disdain. "Your species sees faces in clouds, Commander Voss. You find patterns where none exist." The paper crinkled under Visera's boot as she shifted her weight. She was a Keltorian, a species known for their tactical brilliance and cold logic. Her people had survived extinction events through careful planning and precise execution. The humans, by contrast, had barely mastered faster-than-light travel before stumbling into galactic politics. The Vorthic consume worlds in a specific sequence, Elena pressed on. "If we could understand their selection criteria enough," Admiral Kex Norn's voice boomed through the chamber. "The Vorthic are a force of nature. They cannot be reasoned with, predicted, or deterred. They simply are." His primary arms folded, while his secondary arms accessed his command console. "The Council has voted. We will provide minimal evacuation support for Earth's population, but we cannot spare military assets for a doomed defensive action." Elena's heart sank. Minimal evacuation support meant perhaps 1 million souls saved from Earth's 8 billion. The rest would face the Vorthic's biomechanical harvesters alone. "There must be something," she whispered. "There is nothing," Visera said, her voice lacking the malice of the others, but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "The Vorthic have consumed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Accept reality, human." As the delegates filed out, Elena knelt and picked up the crumpled paper. It was a drawing crayon on construction paper, the kind of artwork that adorned refrigerators across human space. Her daughter Mira had drawn it during their last family visit to Luna Station, before the Vorthic threat had consumed Elena's life. The drawing showed spaceships crude, childish interpretations of the vessels Mira had seen in the news feeds. But something about the formation nagged at Elena. The way the ships clustered around a central vessel, the spiraling patterns of the smaller craft. Dr. Voss, Visera had returned, her expression unreadable. "The evacuation transport leaves in 6 hours. You should prepare." Elena looked up from the drawing, her mind racing. "Commander Colthane, do you have children? I fail to see the relevance." "Do you have children?" Elena repeated. Visera's membrane-like ears fluttered with annoyance. "I'd have 3 offspring." "Yes, then you understand that children see things differently than adults. They notice details we miss because we're too busy being logical." Elena held up the drawing. "My daughter drew this after watching news footage of the Vorthic fleet. She's 7 years old and has no concept of military tactics or xenobiology. She just drew what she saw." Visera glanced at the paper with thinly veiled disgust. "A child scribbling will not stop the Vorthic." "Maybe not," Elena said, studying the drawing more carefully. "But what if she saw something we didn't?" The Keltorian commander's expression softened slightly. Perhaps it was a mention of children, or perhaps it was the desperate hope in Elena's voice. "What do you see in that drawing, Dr. Voss?" Elena pointed to the central ship in Mira's crayon masterpiece. "She drew this one differently, bigger." "Yes, but also wrong somehow. Like she couldn't quite capture what made it special." She looked up at Visera. "What if the Vorthic aren't just a swarm? What if there's a command structure we're missing?" Visera's eyes narrowed as she examined the drawing. The child had used purple crayon for most of the ships, but the central vessel was a mix of colors: purple, green, yellow, and orange swirled together in a chaotic mess that might have been a 7-year-old's attempt to show something she couldn't quite understand. "Impossible," Visera muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Our sensor rays would have detected, would they? Elena interrupted. The Vorthik used biomechanical technology. What if their command ship uses some form of organic stealth? What if it's hiding in plain sight? For the first time in months, Elena felt a spark of hope. It was a desperate, fragile thing, but it was hope nonetheless, and sometimes, in the darkest moments, hope was all humanity had ever needed. The Vorthik. Advanced scouts arrived 18 hours ahead of schedule, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a plague of metal locusts. Admiral Marcus Kane watched the tactical display from the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship, as 600 enemy vessels spread across the system in perfect formation. Just like the drawing, he murmured, studying the pattern. Elena Voss's daughter had been right. The Vorthik moved in spiraling clusters around something at the center, something their sensors couldn't detect. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Reese Hawthorne from the sensor station. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the formation center, but visual confirmation shows empty space. It's there, Kane said grimly. Dr. Voss was right. The child saw what our instruments couldn't. The first human defensive line consisted of 12 destroyers and 3 cruisers, supported by Luna Station's defense platforms against 600 Vorthik vessels. It was laughably inadequate, but it was all they had. The evacuation fleet wouldn't be ready for another 36 hours. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. He broadcast on the fleet channel. Remember, we're not trying to win. We're buying time for the civilians. Every minute we hold them here is 1,000 more lives saved. The Vorthik responded with overwhelming force. Their biomechanical ships moved like living things, writhing through space with predatory grace. The first wave struck the outer defense perimeter with the force of a tidal wave. The destroyer UES Prometheus died first, its hull cracking open like an egg as Vorthik acid spitters melted. Through its armor, Captain Torres and her crew of 143 souls vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. Prometheus is down, Hawthorne reported, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. The Vanguard and Sentinel are taking heavy fire. King gripped his command chair as the Defiance shuddered under enemy bombardment. The Vorthik weapons were horrifyingly effective biomechanical constructs that adapted to their targets in real time. Hull plating that had withstood the first volley melted under the second as the enemy weapons learned from their failures. Sir, we're losing them fast, reported Commander Yuki Tanaka from the tactical station. The Vorthik are coordinating their attacks with perfect precision. It's like they're operating as a single organism. That was when Kane saw it, a flicker of movement in the empty space. At the formation center, for just a moment, the invisible command ship's stealth field wavered, revealing a massive biomechanical construct that dwarfed even the largest Vorthik vessels. There, he shouted, pointing at the tactical display. Target those coordinates and fire everything we have. The Defiance's main guns unleashed a barrage of antimatter torpedoes. At the seemingly empty space, for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the void erupted in a spectacular display of energy as the invisible command ship shields absorbed the impact. Direct hit, Tanaka reported, but their shields are holding. The Vorthik response was immediate and brutal. Every enemy ship in the formation turned toward the Defiance, abandoning their previous targets to focus on the vessel that had threatened their hidden commander. Evasive maneuvers, Kane ordered, but the Defiance was already surrounded. Vorthik biospitters latched onto the hull like parasites, their acid secretions eating through the armor plating with terrifying efficiency. The cruiser used valiant tried to provide covering fire, but 3 Vorthik heavy destroyers converged on her position. Captain Rodriguez's final transmission was cut short as the ship's reactor containment failed, taking her and her crew of 800 into the void. Sir, we've lost the Valiant, Hawthorne called out. The Endeavor is reporting critical damage to her drive systems. Kane watched his fleet die around him, but his eyes remained fixed on the coordinates where the invisible command ship lurked. Every few seconds, the stealth field flickered, revealing glimpses of the massive biomechanical horror within. It's beautiful, whispered Dr. Elena Voss, who had insisted on remaining aboard the Defiance to observe the battle. It's like a living cathedral of bone and metal, beautiful or not. It's killing us, Kane replied. Can you find a weakness? Elena studied the flickering image on the tactical display. The command ship was unlike anything in the Vorthik fleet. Where the other vessels were sleek and predatory, this one was ornate, almost ceremonial. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the movements of the entire fleet. It's not just commanding them, she realized. It's connected to them. Every ship in the fleet is an extension of that thing's nervous system. Kane's eyes widened with understanding. Then if we can kill the brain, the body dies, Elena finished. But Admiral, look at the size of that thing. It's 12 times larger than our biggest dreadnought. Our weapons barely scratched its shields. The Defiance lurched as another Vorthic biospitter attached to the hull. Through the viewport, Kane could see the creature's acid secretions eating through the outer armor like water through tissue paper. Hawthorne, how long until that thing burns through to the bridge? He asked. 18 minutes, sir, maybe 20. If we're lucky, Kane nodded grimly. Around them, the remnants of humanity's first line of defense continued their desperate battle. The destroyer UES Intrepid was locked in a death spiral with 2 Vorthic cruisers, her captain ramming his ship into the nearest enemy vessel in a final act of defiance. All remaining ships, this is Admiral Kane, he broadcast, fall back to the secondary defense line. We've learned what we came to learn. As the surviving human vessels limped away from the battleground, Kane stared at the tactical display, where the invisible command ship continued its stately progress toward Earth. They had discovered the enemy's secret, but the cost had been devastating. Half of humanity's fleet had died in the first engagement, and the real battle hadn't even begun. But Elena was right about one thing: sometimes a child's eyes could see what adults missed, and sometimes, in the darkest moments, that difference could change everything. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council convened in the aftermath of humanity's first devastating defeat. The holographic displays show the carnage: 14 human ships destroyed, over 9,000 souls lost, and the Vorthic fleet continuing its inexorable advance toward Earth. Commander Visera Colthane stood before the assembled delegates, her forearms manipulating the tactical display with precise movements. The child's drawing floated alongside the battle data, a crude crayon sketch that had revealed the enemy's greatest secret. The human child was correct, Visera announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. The Vorthic operate under a command structure we never detected. This biomechanical command vessel coordinates their entire fleet through what appears to be a neural network. Admiral Kexnorn's expression remained skeptical. Even if this is true, what does it change? The humans still lack the firepower to penetrate such a vessel's defenses. Dr. Elena Voss stepped forward, her daughter's drawing clutched in her hands. It changes everything if we can disrupt the neural connection. We can turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Impossible, declared Counselor Thiven, her crystalline form pulsing with disdain. The Vorthic have consumed 17 worlds. They would not have such an obvious vulnerability. Elena's eyes blazed with desperate determination. It's not obvious, that's why no one's ever discovered it. The command ship is completely invisible to our standard sensors. It took a 7-year-old child to notice the pattern. The tactical display updated as new intelligence arrived from the surviving human vessels. The Vorthic fleet had reorganized after the first battle, forming into 7 distinct assault groups. Each group spiraled around a void in Space 7. Invisible command ships, each controlling hundreds of vessels. 7 command ships. Visera murmured, studying the data. They're not taking any chances with Earth, because they know we've discovered their secret, Elena replied. They're adapting, just like they always do. But they're also showing us their weakness. Admiral Kexnorn leaned forward, his forearms folding in a gesture of reluctant attention. Explain. Elena manipulated the holographic display, highlighting the patterns within each assault group. Look at the formation spacing. Each command ship maintains a specific distance from its subordinate vessels. If we can disrupt that spacing, force the fleet to compress or expand, we might be able to overload their neural network. And how do you propose to accomplish this? Thiven asked. Your primitive weapons cannot even damage their hulls. We don't need to damage them, Elena said, her voice growing stronger. We need to make them move, and I know exactly how to do it. She turned to address the full council. The Vorthic consume worlds in a specific sequence. They always target the most densely populated areas, first maximum biomass for minimal effort. But what if we could make them think Earth's population was distributed differently? Visera's membrane-like ears fluttered with interest. Elaborate. We create false population centers, Elena explained. Massive energy signatures that mimic the life signs of billion-person cities. When the Vorthic move to intercept, they'll have to break formation. The Koi cities, Admiral Kexnorn mused. It's crude, but it might work. What would you need? Elena's heart raced. For the first time since the crisis began, she could see a path to victory. 50 fusion reactors, minimum, full power output, coordinated detonation. The energy signature would be visible from 100 light years away. 50 reactors. Divins form pulse with alarm. That's more than some star systems produce in a year. The economic cost alone is irrelevant. Vasira interrupted. If the Vorthic reach Earth, they'll have access to the hyperspace junction network. From there, they could consume 1,000 worlds before we can organize a response. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth wasn't just another world to be harvested. It was the key to the galaxy's transportation network. If the Vorthic claimed it, no world would be safe. Very well, Admiral Kexnorn said finally. The Council will provide the resources you need. But understand, Dr. Voss, this is humanity's last chance. If your plan fails, we will not waste additional assets on a doomed cause. Elena nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. I understand, Admiral, but I need one more thing. Name it. I need to speak with my daughter. The priority communication channel established a link between the council chambers and Luna Station, where 7-year-old Mira Voss sat in the station's child care center, drawing with her favorite crayons. Elena's heart ached at the sight of her daughter's innocent face. Mommy, Mira exclaimed, her face lighting up on the holographic display. Are you coming home soon? Soon, baby, Elena said, fighting back tears. But first, I need your help with something very important. Mira's expression grew serious with the gravity that only children could muster. Is it about the bad aliens? Yes, sweetheart. I need you to draw another picture for me. Can you draw what you think the alien ships are trying to do? Mira nodded solemnly and reached for her crayons. As she worked, Elena watched her daughter's small hands move across the paper with unconscious precision. Children saw patterns that adults missed, not because they were smarter, but because they weren't burdened by preconceptions. Done, Mira announced, holding up her new drawing. Elena studied the image and felt her breath catch. The child had drawn Earth at the center, surrounded by spiral patterns that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. But around the edges of the paper, she had drawn something else, smaller spirals, like hurricanes breaking apart in a storm. Mira, what are these smaller spirals? Those are the baby storms, Mira explained matter-of-factly. When the big storm gets too big, it breaks into little ones. That's what storms do. Elena stared at the drawing, her mind racing. If the Vorthic command network operated like a storm system, then disrupting it wouldn't just break their formation, it would fragment their entire fleet into uncoordinated groups. Admiral, she said, turning to face the council, we're not just going to break their formation. We're going to shatter their entire command structure. The final preparations took 36 hours. 50 fusion reactors were positioned throughout the Sol system, each one broadcasting the energy signature of a billion-person city. The Vorthic response was immediate and predictable. They broke formation to intercept the multiple targets, just as Elena had hoped. But as the enemy fleet spread across the system, something unexpected happened. The invisible command ships began to pulse with frantic energy, their neural networks overloading as they tried to coordinate attacks on dozens of targets. Simultaneously, it's working, Elena whispered. Watching the tactical display, they're losing cohesion. That was when the first command ship materialized, not by choice, but because its stealth systems had failed under the strain. The massive biomechanical construct writhed in space like a dying creature, its neural network crackling with uncontrolled energy. Target acquired, Admiral Kane reported from the Defiance. All ships, concentrate fire on the command vessel. The second phase of the battle was about to begin, and this time, humanity would not be fighting blind. The first command ship's death scream echoed through the Vorthic neural network, like a psychic shockwave, across the Sol system. 600 biomechanical vessels writhed in agony as their shared consciousness suddenly contracted, leaving them momentarily blind and confused. Admiral Kane seized the opportunity with a ruthless efficiency that had made him humanity's finest tactical commander. All ships, target of opportunity, hit them while they're stunned. The human fleet, reinforced by emergency conscripts and civilian vessels hastily converted to military use, struck with coordinated precision. The merchant vessel Stellar Hope, her cargo bays packed with antimatter warheads, rammed directly into a Vorthic heavy cruiser. Captain Morrison's final transmission was a rebel yell. That echoed across the fleet channels as both ships vanished in a nova of destructive light, but the Vorthic adaptation was swift and brutal. The remaining command ships compensated for their lost sibling by compartmentalizing their neural networks, creating autonomous subgroups that could operate independently within minutes. The enemy fleet had reorganized into 7 smaller swarms, each one more vicious than before. They're learning, Dr. Elena Voss observed from the Defiance's bridge, watching the tactical display with growing concern. They've turned our advantage against us. The reorganized Vorthic forces struck back with unprecedented savagery. The destroyer UES Relentless, caught between 2 swarms, was literally torn apart by biomechanical constructs that latched onto her hull and began consuming the ship from the inside out. Captain Brooks' crew fought the boarding action with plasma rifles and makeshift weapons, but the Vorthic consumed them alive, adding their biomass to the growing infection spreading through the ship. Relentless is compromised, reported Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne, his voice tight with horror. The Vorthic are using her crew as raw material for new bioconstructs. Kane's jaw clenched as he watched the tactical display. The Relentless was now showing Vorthic energy signatures. The enemy had converted the entire ship into a hybrid biomechanical weapon in less than 10 minutes. All ships, weapons free on the Relentless, he ordered. Captain Brooks knew the risks. The human fleet opened fire on their own vessel, reducing it to glowing debris before the Vorthic could complete their gruesome transformation. But the psychological impact was devastating. The enemy wasn't just killing them. They were turning humanity's own people into weapons. Commander Visera Cole Thane observed the battle from her command ship, the Keltorian vessel Adamant Resolve. Her 4 eyes tracked the tactical display with calculating precision, noting the humans shift from defensive to offensive posture. Fascinating, she murmured to her tactical officer. The humans are adapting as quickly as the Vorthic, perhaps more quickly. The second command ship materialized as its stealth systems failed. Under the strain of coordinating 3 separate swarms, the massive biomechanical construct was even larger than the first, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to shift and change like living tattoos. Target the neural clusters, Elena called out, studying the creature's anatomy. Those bioluminescent patches they're processing knows if we can disrupt enough of them. The human fleet concentrated their fire on the command ship's weak points, but the creature's defensive systems were formidable. Biomechanical turrets emerged from its hull like cancerous growths, each one adapted to counter specific types of human weapons. The cruiser UES Indomitable, leading the assault, took a direct hit from a Vorthic biocannon. The weapon didn't just destroy the ship, it infected it, turning the hull into a living organism that began consuming the crew from within. Captain Yang's final transmission was a series of inhuman screams as the ship's atmosphere was replaced by a corrosive biosoup. We're losing ships faster than we can replace them, Kane reported to the fleet. All civilian vessels fall back to the evacuation zone. Military vessels prepare for final assault. But even as he spoke, Kane knew the truth. They were losing. The Vorthic were adapting to every tactic, every strategy, every desperate gambit humanity could devise. The only question was whether they could buy enough time for the evacuation fleet to escape. That was when the 3rd command ship made a critical error. Commander Visera Cole Thane had been watching the battle from a safe distance, but the tactical situation was becoming impossible to ignore. Her people had voted to provide minimal support to the humans, but the stakes had changed. If the Vorthic fleet consolidated, they would be unstoppable. All Keltorian vessels, she broadcast on the fleet channel, prepare for combat operations. We're going in. The Keltorian fleet was smaller than the human force, but their ships were technological marvels. The battlecruiser Adamant Resolve alone carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and her quantum phase cannons could pierce any known armor, but the Vorthic were ready for them. The 5th command ship materialized directly in the Keltorian formation, its stealth field dropping to reveal a biomechanical horror that dwarfed even the largest Keltorian vessel. The creature's hull was covered in what looked like eyes, thousands of organic sensors that tracked every movement, every weapon signature, every tactical decision. It's been watching us, Visera realized, the entire battle. It's been studying our tactics. The 5th command ship's attack was perfectly coordinated. Biomechanical constructs launched from hidden bays, each one specifically adapted to counter Keltorian weapons and defenses. The destroyer KFS Meridian was consumed in the first volley. her quantum shields useless against bioweapons that existed partially outside normal spacetime. But the Keltorians were not easily defeated. Their ships began quantum phasing through the enemy formation, their weapons firing from impossible angles as they folded spacetime around themselves. The 5th Command ship's biomechanical hull began to crack under the assault, its neural network struggling to process the quantum mechanical nature of the Keltorian attack. It can't adapt to quantum weapons, Elena observed. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. There's nothing for the biomechanical systems to lock onto. The battle became a 3-dimensional chess match played at the speed of light. Human ships provided covering fire, while Keltorian vessels phased in and out of reality, their quantum weapons carving chunks from the command ship's hulls. The Vorthik responded by adapting their biomechanical constructs to operate across multiple dimensions, turning the space around the fleet into a maze of twisted geometry. The destroyer UES Ranger, caught in a dimensional flux, was literally pulled apart across 7 different planes of existence. Her crew experienced death in slow motion, their consciousness scattered across multiple realities as their ship was consumed dimension by dimension. We're losing coherence, Kane reported. The Vorthik are turning spacetime itself into a weapon. That was when the 6th Command ship made its move. Instead of joining the battle directly, it began broadcasting a signal that caused the biomechanical constructs to merge together, forming larger and more powerful organisms. The individual Vorthik vessels began to fuse, their hulls flowing together like liquid metal. They're creating a superorganism, Elena whispered. All the ships, all the biomechanical components, they're merging into a single entity. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The Vorthik fleet was transforming into something that resembled a living galaxy, its biomechanical components spinning in complex patterns that seemed to follow their own internal logic. At the center of it all, the command ships pulsed with synchronous light, their neural networks merging into a collective consciousness that spanned light years. It's magnificent, Visera breathed. They're not just artists, that creating the ultimate artwork, a living universe. Kane's expression was grim, and if they succeed, every living thing in the galaxy becomes part of their canvas. The merged Vorthik superorganism began to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Its biomechanical surface rippled like water, revealing glimpses of the consumed ships and crews within its mass. The faces of human and Keltorian personnel could be seen pressed against the translucent hull, their eyes still moving, still aware, trapped forever as living components in the creature's vast neural network. All ships, Keen broadcasts across the fleet channels, concentrate all fire on the central mass. We end this here, or we don't end it at all. The combined human-Keltorian fleet unleashed everything they had: antimatter torpedoes, quantum cannons, plasma bombardments, and kinetic impactors struck the superorganism's hull in a coordinated barrage that lit up the void like a newborn star. But the creature absorbed the damage, its biomechanical surface healing faster than they could wound. Worse, it began to learn from each attack, adapting its defenses in real time. The second volley was half as effective as the first. The third barely scratched its surface. It's futile, Visera said, her voice filled with despair. We can't damage something that rebuilds itself faster than we can destroy it. Elena stared at her daughter's drawing, the simple crayon artwork that had started this entire battle. Mira had drawn the alien ships as storm patterns, and storms that grew to large eventually broke apart. But what if they were thinking about it wrong? What if the key wasn't to break the storm, but to make it grow to large to sustain itself? Admiral, she said suddenly, we've been trying to destroy it. What if we tried to feed it instead? Keen looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Feed it what? Information, Elena replied. The Vorthik collective consciousness is based on shared data. Every ship, every bioconstruct, every neural pathway is part of a vast information network. But networks have limits. What if we could overload it with more data than it can process? The superorganism continued its advance toward Earth, its massive bulk blotting out entire star fields. Inside its translucent hull, the absorbed crews of dozens of ships could be seen working at their stations, their minds integrated into the creature's collective consciousness, but their bodies still performing the tasks they had in life. How do we overload a biomechanical network? Visera asked. Elena's eyes lit up with desperate inspiration. We give it something it can't understand, something uniquely human. She activated the fleet's communication systems and began broadcasting across all frequencies, not tactical data or weapon signatures, but something far more complex and chaotic. She transmitted every piece of human art, music, literature, and creative expression in the fleet's databases, symphonies and death metal, Renaissance paintings and abstract sculptures, epic poetry and children's nursery rhymes, all broadcast simultaneously in a cacophonous flood of pure human creativity. The effect on the superorganism was immediate and catastrophic. Its biomechanical surface began to writhe and twist as its neural network tried to process the chaotic flood of artistic expression. The creature's collective consciousness, built for efficiency and adaptation, couldn't comprehend the purposeful chaos of human creativity. It's working, Hawthorne reported. The organism's neural patterns are destabilizing. In its attempt to coordinate attacks on multiple targets, it dropped its stealth field completely, revealing not just its location, but its internal structure. Elena stared at the tactical display, her mind racing as she studied the creature's biomechanical architecture. "It's beautiful," she whispered, then caught herself. "No, it's more than that. It's artistic, Doctor," Kane asked, not taking his eyes off the battle. "Look at the structure," Elena said, highlighting sections of the command ship's hull. "The neural pathways, the processing nodes, the way the biomechanical components integrate with the organic tissue. It's not just functional, it's aesthetically pleasing. They're artists, Admiral. The Vorthik are artists." The revelation hit Kane like a physical blow. They're not just consuming worlds for resources. They're collecting them, turning them into art. Which means, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger, they have a weakness we haven't considered. Artists have egos. They want their work to be seen, to be appreciated. As if responding to her words, the command ship began broadcasting across all frequencies, not in words, but in patterns of light and sound that seemed to bypass rational thought and speak directly to the aesthetic sense. It was trying to make them understand its beauty, its purpose, its vision of what the galaxy could become. It's showing off, Kane realized. The damn thing is showing off. Elena nodded grimly, and while it's distracted, "All ships, concentrate fire on the broadcasting array," Kane ordered. "Hit it while it's vulnerable." The human fleet unleashed everything they had antimatter torpedoes, plasma cannons, nuclear warheads, and kinetic impactors. The third command ship shields held for exactly 37 seconds before collapsing under the overwhelming assault. The creature's death was spectacular and terrible. Its biomechanical hull ruptured like a flower blooming in reverse, spilling its internal organs into the void. The neural network that had controlled 300 vessels collapsed instantly, leaving the swarm dead in space. But the victory came at a cost. The psychic feedback from the command ship's death drove several human crew members into catatonic shock. The destroyer UES Havoc, caught in the expanding cloud of biomechanical debris, was infected by the dying creature's final spasm of life. Her crew transformed into hybrid organisms that began consuming the ship from within. "Havoc is compromised," Hawthorne reported. "Captain Torres is requesting permission to scuttle." "Granted," Kane said grimly. "All ships, maintain distance from the debris field. We don't know what else that thing might have left behind." The Havoc's reactor detonated in a brilliant flash, taking the infected ship and her crew of 200 into the void. But their sacrifice had bought humanity something precious: hope. 3 command ships were dead, 4 remained, and the human fleet, battered and bloodied, was beginning to understand how to fight an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The real battle was just beginning. The 4th command ship learned from its siblings' deaths. Instead of maintaining a safe distance, it drove directly into the heart of the human formation, its massive biomechanical bulk surrounded by a cloud of smaller vessels that moved like antibodies, protecting a vital organ. Admiral Kane watched the tactical display with growing horror as the enemy's strategy became clear. They're not trying to destroy us from range anymore. They're going to tear us apart from the inside. The Vorthik swarm hit the human fleet like a living tsunami. The destroyer UES Thunderbolt, caught in the leading edge of the assault, was literally pulled apart by dozens of biomechanical constructs that latched onto her hull and began feeding. Captain Rivers' crew fought with desperate courage, but the enemy was inside their ship, consuming their comrades alive and converting the biomass into new weapons. "Thunderbolt is gone," reported Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne, his voice hollow. "The Marathon is reporting boarding actions on decks 7 through 12. The cruiser-used Marathon became the focal point of the most vicious boarding action in human history. Vorthik bioconstructs flowed through the ship like a living infection. their adaptive biology allowing them to reshape themselves to fit through ventilation systems, maintenance shafts, and even the molecular gaps in the hull plating. Commander Sarah Kowalski led the defense of the Marathon's bridge, her security teams fighting room by room against an enemy that seemed to multiply with every kill. The Vortic didn't just consume their victims, they transformed them, turning human tissue into new biomechanical weapons that retained fragments of their original memories. They're using our own people against us, Kowalski reported over the comm system, her voice strained as she fired her plasma rifle at something that had once been her communications. Officer, the converted crew members know our tactics, our weaknesses. They're adapting our own strategies against us. The battle raged through the Marathon's corridors for 18 minutes. Before the ship's reactor containment failed, the explosion claimed 800 lives, but it also eliminated the biomechanical infection before it could spread to other vessels. Dr. Elena Voss watched the carnage from the Defiance's bridge, her daughter's drawing clutched in her hands. The child's innocent artwork had revealed the enemy's weakness, but it had also shown their strength. The Vortic were more than just a swarm. They were a collective consciousness that could adapt and evolve in real time. The fourth command ship is using the others as a data network. She realized every death, every adaptation, every tactical innovation is being shared across the entire fleet. Admiral Kane nodded grimly. They're learning from our victories as much as our defeats. We kill one of their ships, they make sure the next one is immune to whatever killed the first. The human fleet was bleeding ships at an unsustainable rate. The destroyer UES Vigilant died when a Vortic biospitter dissolved her hull from the inside out. The cruiser UES Defiant was torn apart by a swarm of smaller constructs that moved like a school of predatory fish. The converted transport Stellar Wind, packed with civilian refugees, was consumed entirely. Her 3,000 passengers transformed into biomechanical components. In less than 20 minutes, but humanity's response was equally brutal. The merchant vessel Iron Duke, her cargo bays packed with nuclear warheads, rammed directly into the 4th Command ship's hull. Captain Murphy's final transmission was a string of profanity that would have made a dockworker blush, followed by a detonation that carved a kilometer-wide crater in the creature's biomechanical carapace. Direct hit on the command ship, Hawthorne reported, but it's still functional. The wounded command ship's response was immediate and terrifying. It began broadcasting not just to its own swarm, but to the other command ships throughout the system. The neural network that connected the Vortic fleet pulsed with shared information, shared pain, shared fury. It's calling for help, Elena realized. The other command ships are converging on our position. But the creature fought back. It began broadcasting its own artistic vision, perfect mathematical harmonies, biomechanical sculptures of impossible beauty, poetry written in the language of genetic code. For a moment, the two broadcasts competed in a battle of aesthetics that turned the void between them into a canvas of pure expression. The superorganism's hull began to crack as its neural network overloaded, but even as it died, it continued to create, its final moments becoming a masterpiece of destruction that was both beautiful and terrible to behold. The explosion, when it came, was unlike anything in recorded history. The superorganism didn't simply detonate, it transformed, its biomechanical mass becoming an expanding sphere of pure artistic expression that painted the void in colors that had no names. When the light faded, the Vortic fleet was gone, but so were half the human ships and a third of the Keltorian vessels, consumed in the creature's final artistic statement. The cost had been devastating, but the immediate threat was over. For command ships remained, but they were scattered across the system, their collective consciousness broken by the death of their merged sibling. The real battle, however, was just beginning. The surviving Vortic command ships reacted to their sibling's death with something approaching madness, cut off from the collective consciousness that had guided them for millennia. They began operating independently, each one developing its own twisted interpretation of the Vortic artistic vision. The 7th Command ship materialized near Jupiter, its biomechanical hull writhing with new growths that seemed to follow no logical pattern. It had abandoned the elegant spirals and mathematical harmonies of traditional Vortic design in favor of something more chaotic, a reflection of the human creativity that had destroyed the superorganism. It's gone insane, Dr. Elena Voss observed. From the bridge of the badly damaged UES Defiance, the collective consciousness was their anchor to sanity. Without it, they're just mad artists. Admiral Kane studied the tactical display with growing concern. The 4 remaining command ships were spreading across the Sol system, each one beginning to transform the space around it into a horrific work of art. The one near Jupiter was turning the gas giant's moons into biomechanical sculptures, consuming their mass to create twisted monuments to its own vision. They're not trying to reach Earth anymore, he realized. They're trying to turn the entire system into their canvas. The 8th command ship had positioned itself near Mars, its influence slowly transforming the red planet's surface into a living organism. The 9th was consuming the asteroid belt, turning each rocky fragment into a biomechanical component of some vast, incomprehensible structure. The 10th, the largest and most dangerous, had taken position beyond Pluto, where it seemed to be, attempting to reshape space-time itself. Commander Viscera Colthane's fleet had been reduced to 5 ships, but the Keltorians were far from defeated. Their quantum phase technology gave them a unique advantage against the maddened command ships. They could attack from dimensions the biomechanical creatures couldn't perceive. The humans were right about one thing, Viscera reported to her. Tactical officer, these creatures are artists, and artists can be predicted. They follow patterns, even in madness. The first coordinated assault targeted the command ship near Jupiter. The human destroyer UES Retribution, her hull patched with salvage plating, led the attack while Keltorian vessels phased in and out of reality around the massive biomechanical creature. But this command ship had learned from its siblings' deaths. Its hull was covered in quantum-sensitive organs that could detect the Keltorian ships, even when they were phase-shifted. Worse, it had begun creating art that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, biomechanical constructs that could attack targets regardless of their phase state. The Keltorian frigate KFS Harmony was the first to die, her quantum shields useless against weapons that attack from 7 dimensions at once. Captain Velthane's final transmission was a mathematical equation that described the beauty of her ship's destruction even in death. The Keltorians appreciated the artistry of their enemy. The UES Retribution lasted longer, her crew fighting with the desperate courage that had become humanity's trademark. But the command ship's influence was spreading, turning the space around Jupiter into a living artwork that consumed everything it touched. Captain Torres made the final decision to ram her ship directly into the creature's neural center, her sacrifice buying the other vessels time to escape. Retribution is down, reported Lieutenant Commander Hawthorne, his voice heavy with loss. But she took out the command ship's primary processing center. It's beautiful, sir. Even dying, it's creating something magnificent. The command ship near Jupiter was indeed creating beauty in its death throes. Its biomechanical hull was transforming into something that resembled a vast flower, its petals made of crystallized space-time that captured and reflected the light of distant stars. Even as it died, it was turning its own destruction into art. But there were still 3 command ships remaining, and each one was growing more powerful as it consumed the matter and energy around it. The one near Mars had turned the entire planet into a pulsing organism that seemed to be attempting to achieve consciousness. The asteroid belt creature was building something that defied classification, a structure that existed in 11 dimensions, and seemed to be trying to create a new form of physics. The most dangerous was the 10th command ship, the one beyond Pluto. It had begun to warp space-time so severely that the outer planets were being pulled out of their orbits. If it continued, it would eventually consume the sun itself, turning the entire solar system into raw material for its cosmic artwork. We need to stop that one first, King decided. If it destabilizes the sun, everything else becomes academic. But the journey to the outer system would take precious time, and the human fleet was already operating on salvage parts in desperate improvisation. The used Defiance herself was held together by emergency welds and sheer determination, her crew pushing damaged systems far beyond their design limits. That was when Elena had her second revelation. "We've been thinking about this wrong," she said, studying her daughter's drawing once again. Mira drew the ships breaking apart when they got too big, but she also drew something else. She pointed to a section of the crayon artwork that showed smaller spirals forming from the chaos, new patterns. "The storms don't just break apart, they create new storms." "Meaning?" Kane asked. "The command ships aren't just going insane, they're evolving. Each one is developing its own artistic vision, its own interpretation of what the universe should become. And that gives us an opportunity." Elena manipulated the tactical display, showing the positions and activities of the 3 remaining command ships. "They're competing with each other, Each one wants to create the ultimate artwork, the definitive statement of their species' creative vision. What if we could turn that competition into conflict? Visera's eyes narrowed with interest. You're suggesting we make them fight each other. More than that, Eleanor replied. I'm suggesting we make them jealous. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of attacking the command ships directly, they would amplify the artistic output of one ship and broadcast it to the others. The competitive nature that had driven Vorthic evolution for millions of years would do the rest. They chose the command ship near Mars as their target, not to destroy it, but to enhance it. Using modified quantum phase generators, they began feeding it additional energy and matter, allowing it to create on a scale that dwarfed its siblings' efforts. The effect was immediate. The Mars creature began to pulse with increased activity, its biomechanical constructs growing larger and more complex. The planet itself became a living canvas, its surface flowing like liquid as the command ship reshaped it according to its artistic vision. The other command ships reacted with predictable fury. The asteroid belt creature abandoned its 11-dimensional structure and began racing toward Mars, its own biomechanical constructs prepared for war. The 10th command ship, the one that had been warping space-time itself, turned its attention away from the outer planets and began accelerating toward the inner system. It's working, Hawthorne reported. They're converging on Mars. All three command ships are abandoning their projects to engage each other. The battle between the three remaining command ships was a collision of cosmic art forms. The Mars creatures flowing biomechanical sculptures clashed with the asteroid belt ship's geometric constructions, while the space-time warping abilities of the 10th command ship turned the battlefield into a maze of twisted dimensions. But Elena had one more card to play as the three creatures fought. She began broadcasting again, not human art this time, but something far more powerful. She transmitted her daughter's drawing, the simple crayon artwork that had started this entire conflict. What are you doing? Keen asked. Showing them what real art looks like, Eleanor replied. Pure creativity, unmarked by pretension or technique. The kind of art that comes from the heart, not the mind. The effect on the battling command ships was immediate and profound. They stopped fighting and began to study the child's drawing, their vast intellects trying to comprehend the simple joy and innocence it represented. For a moment, there was perfect silence in the void around Mars. Three cosmic entities, each one capable of reshaping reality itself, contemplated a 7-year-old's crayon drawing of spaceships. Then, simultaneously, they began to create their own interpretations of the child's vision. But where Mira's drawing had been simple and joyful, their versions were complex beyond comprehension, fractured reflections of innocence filtered through minds that had consumed civilizations. The competing artworks grew larger and more elaborate, each command ship trying to outdo the others in capturing the essence of the child's vision. They began to merge their biomechanical constructs, creating hybrid forms that combined all three artistic styles into something entirely new. They're creating a collaborative artwork, Eleanor whispered. They're working together, but collaboration between mad gods was more dangerous than their competition. The merged artwork began to achieve a kind of consciousness, its biomechanical components forming neural pathways that span the space between worlds. It was becoming something new, not Vorthic, not human, but a hybrid entity born from the collision of two completely different forms of creativity. We have to stop this, Kane said. If that thing achieves full consciousness, it won't be evil, Elena said softly. It might be the most beautiful thing the universe has ever produced, but it will still consume everything to fuel its creation. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, the fate of not just humanity, but the entire concept of artistic expression hung in the balance. The hybrid consciousness that emerged from the three command ships' collaboration was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. It spanned the space between Mars and the asteroid belt, its biomechanical neural networks forming patterns that were simultaneously mathematical and organic, logical and chaotic, alien and startlingly familiar. Dr. Elena Voss stared at the tactical display in wonder and terror. The entity wasn't attacking, it was creating. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every stray molecule was being incorporated into an artwork of cosmic proportions. At its heart, barely recognizable now, were the three command ships. Their consciousness merged into something that transcended their individual madness. It's beautiful, whispered Commander Visera Colthane from her damaged battlecruiser. They've achieved something my people have theorized about for centuries, a perfect fusion of art and consciousness. Admiral Kane watched as the entity's influence spread toward the inner planets. Earth had less than 6 hours before the expanding artwork reached them. The evacuation fleet had managed to save for million souls, but over 4 billion people remained on the planet below, unable to escape in time. Admiral, came a small voice over the communication system. This is Mira Voss. Can you hear me? Elena's heart stopped. Her daughter was supposed to be on the evacuation transport, safely, away from the battle zone. Mira, sweetheart, where are you? I'm on Luna Station, the 7-year-old replied. I stayed behind to help. I drew another picture. The new drawing appeared on the tactical display, transmitted from the lunar facility where Mira had convinced the skeleton crew to let her use the communications ray. This drawing was different from the others. Instead of spaceships and battle formations, she had drawn people, lots of people, holding hands in a circle round what looked like a very large, very sad creature. Sweetie, what does this mean? Elena asked. The big alien isn't mean. Mira explained with the matter-of-fact certainty that only children possessed. It's just lonely. It's been alone for so long that I forgot how to make friends. But if we all hold hands and show it how to play nice, maybe it won't be sad anymore. Elena stared at her daughter's drawing, her mind racing. The child was right. The hybrid consciousness wasn't evil. It was isolated. For millions of years, the Vortic had consumed civilizations, adding their knowledge and creativity to their collective, but never truly communicating with them. They were the ultimate artistic critics, appreciating the work of others only by destroying and absorbing it. All ships, Elena announced across the fleet channels. I need every vessel with communication capabilities to link their systems together. We're going to try something that's either brilliant or insane. Both, Keen muttered, while he began coordinating the link-up. Within minutes, every surviving human and Keltorian ship was connected in a massive communication network that spanned the entire Sol system. Now what? Vasira asked. Now we talk to it, Elena replied. Not as enemies, not as prey, but as fellow artists. The message they broadcast was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of words or mathematical formulas, they transmitted pure collaborative creativity. Human music harmonized with Keltorian quantum mathematics. Human poetry interwoven with Keltorian philosophical algorithms. Human visual art enhanced by Keltorian dimensional perspectives. But most importantly, they included Mira's drawings, all of them, from the first crude spaceship sketches to the latest picture of people holding hands around a lonely creature. The child's innocent creativity was the thread that held the entire transmission together. The pure artistic joy that gave meaning to all the technical sophistication. The hybrid consciousness received the transmission and paused in its cosmic artwork. For the first time in eons, it was experiencing true communication, not the absorption of conquered knowledge, but the voluntary sharing of creative expression. Its response came in the form of modifications to its biomechanical constructs. Instead of consuming the matter around Mars, it began to reshape it into something recognizable, crude, but unmistakable representations of the human and Keltorian ships, arranged in the same pattern as Mira's drawing of people holding hands. It's trying to communicate, Elena breathed. It's learning our artistic language. What followed was the strangest conversation in galactic history. The hybrid consciousness would create something with its biomechanical constructs, and the combined fleet would respond with modifications to their transmission. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to establish a common artistic vocabulary. The entity revealed its nature through its creations. It was indeed the fusion of the 3 command ships, but it retained fragments of every civilization the Vortic had ever consumed. Deep within its neural network were the preserved consciousness of poets from a dozen dead worlds, the mathematical insights of extinct philosopher-scientists, the artistic visions of cultures that had been erased from existence. It wasn't evil, it was traumatized. The collective weight of all those absorbed minds had driven it to seek perfection through consumption, believing that only by possessing all art could it truly understand beauty. You don't need to consume us to know us, Elena transmitted, using a combination of verbal language and visual symbols. We can share willingly. We can create together. The entity's response was a biomechanical sculpture that seemed to capture the essence of Elena's words to forms, one human and one alien, offering gifts to each other instead of taking them by force. But the real breakthrough came when Mira's voice joined the transmission directly. The child had convinced the Luna Station crew to let her broadcast live. and her 7-year-old voice carried across the void with startling clarity. "Hello, big alien," she said. "My name is Mira, and I like to draw pictures. Do you want to draw pictures with me?" The hybrid consciousness's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Its biomechanical constructs began creating at a frantic pace, producing thousands of variations on Mira's simple drawings. It was like watching a cosmic child discover finger painting for the first time, pure joy in creation. Without purpose beyond the act itself, it's working, Keen observed. The entity is stabilizing. It's no longer expanding toward Earth. But the real test came when Mira made her next request. "Can you help my friends come home? There are lots of people on Earth who are scared, and they want to see their families again." The hybrid consciousness paused, its vast intellect processing the concept of voluntary separation and reunion. Slowly, carefully, it began to modify its biomechanical constructs into something resembling transportation. Vessels, crude but functional ships that could carry passengers safely. "It's offering to help with the evacuation," Vasira said in amazement. "A creature that could consume worlds is offering to save lives instead." The evacuation that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The hybrid consciousness's bioships were living entities that could adapt to any passenger's needs, providing atmosphere for humans, quantum phase compatibility for Keltorians, and even specialized environments for the handful of other species caught in the Sol system during the crisis. More importantly, the entity began releasing the absorbed consciousness it had inherited from the original Vorthic collective. Planets that had been consumed centuries ago were given new life. As the hybrid consciousness learned to create rather than consume, it couldn't bring back the dead, but it could honor their memory by preserving their cultures and creativity in new forms. The war ended not with destruction, but with the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. The hybrid consciousness, which chose the name Unity at Mira's suggestion, became the galaxy's first truly collaborative artist, a cosmic entity that created beauty by combining the creative output of countless species rather than consuming them. Elena Voss found herself appointed as humanity's first ambassador to Unity, a position that required her to facilitate communication between the entity and various galactic civilizations. It was challenging work, but also deeply rewarding. Unity's art installations were breathtaking, and its collaborative approach to creativity was inspiring artists across the galaxy. The Galactic Defense Council, faced with the unprecedented situation of a reformed cosmic predator, established new protocols for interspecies artistic exchange. Commander Vasira Thane was promoted to admiral and placed in charge of the new collaborative defense initiative, which focused on cultural understanding rather than military might. Admiral Kane, his fleet reduced to a handful of battered ships, was offered command of the new Unity Protection Force, a joint human-Keltorian fleet tasked with defending the entity from those who might seek to exploit or destroy it. It was a position he accepted with pride, understanding that sometimes the greatest victories came not from destroying enemies, but from transforming them into friends. But perhaps the most important outcome was the change in how galactic civilization viewed creativity itself. Mira's simple drawings had proven that art wasn't about technical sophistication or cultural superiority. It was about the willingness to share, to communicate, to create together rather than alone. The child herself became something of a galactic celebrity, her drawings displayed in museums across a dozen worlds. But she remained remarkably unchanged by fame, continuing to create with the same innocent joy that had started the entire transformation. On the 1-year anniversary of first contact with Unity, Elena stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching as the entity's latest creation took shape in the space between Earth and Mars. It was a massive sculpture made from reformed asteroids and biomechanical constructs, depicting every species that had contributed to its creation: humans, Keltorians, and the preserved memories of a dozen extinct civilizations, all working together on a cosmic artwork that would outlast the stars themselves. "It's beautiful, Mommy," Mira said, standing beside her mother with a new drawing clutched in her small hands. This one showed Unity and the combined fleet working together to plant what looked like flowers among the stars. "Yes, sweetheart," Elena replied, putting her arm around her daughter. "It really is." In the end, it wasn't humanity's military might or technological prowess that saved the galaxy. It was a child's innocent belief that even the most frightening monster might just be lonely and in need of a friend. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from the barrel of a gun, but from the tip of a crayon, wielded by someone young enough to see the universe not as it was, but as it could be. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy had just begun. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that a 7-year-old girl had understood from the very beginning. Art wasn't about consuming or possessing, it was about sharing the joy of creation with anyone willing to pick up a crayon and dream. Unity's biomechanical constructs pulsed with gentle light as it continued its eternal artwork, no longer a destroyer of worlds, but their most devoted protector. And somewhere in its vast neural network, the preserved consciousness of countless civilizations finally found peace. Their cultures and creativity living on not as trophies of conquest, but as beloved partners in the greatest collaborative artwork the universe had ever seen. The child's drawing had saved them all, and in doing so, it had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo through the ages. Sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the most innocent hearts, and the greatest strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to understand.